let's get started this section. So I think the first thing I want to do is lay in some of these colors down here. We have some green leaves. We have more of this pink color that I wish I noticed before, because I would have filled it in then. To be honest, I don't know if I even saw this entire section last week. Let me get that on camera a little better, because I didn't really do anything to that section. It's just there, drawn in still. So that's where we're going to start. I guess I'm going to mix a green first. I'm going to mix both. I'm going to mix a green and then this orangish, pinkish, creamy looking color. It's probably going to be a little bit different, and that's okay because it is heavily in shadow. So it's going to be okay that it's not quite the same. So got my palette knife here. I'm going to start with the green. As always, with the greens on this chair, they're mostly like yellow green. I'm gonna try and not make a huge ton of this stuff. So we have our yellow. We're gonna mix in some blue. Definitely not that much. Tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. This is probably way too much. We're gonna be adding more yellow, I'm sure. Not too bad, actually. All right, so we have a very small amount here. That's okay. We don't need a lot. So now we need to knock that back in intensity. So how do we do that? We add the opposite color, and the opposite of color, or the opposite color of green is red. Now it's hard to tell from here because we're working with a very yellow green. So if we go directly opposite, it kind of looks like purple is the opposite, and that's because we're really looking at a reddish purple. So if we're working with the yellow green, if we really want the true opposite, we're going to take the opposite of both those colors. So the opposite of yellow is purple, the opposite of green is red. So we want a reddish purple or a purple red, whichever you want, whatever you want to call it. Same thing. I mean, you could get real technical and say, no, it depends on which word comes first. It's all subjective, at least in my eyes. Maybe there's, see, the way I think of it is you put the like adjective first, like a red purple is more purple than red. So it's like a purple, but it's a red purple. Some people may say, well, it's the first word, it's got to be the main color, but who knows? It's in the middle. So anyway, moral of the story, the opposite of our yellow-green, reddish-purple, that's what we're going to do. Luckily, we have a reddish-purple, kind of, right here. Our cool red is essentially what we need. I need to make sure I don't get carried away, which I tend to do when I mix opposites in to desaturate my colors. So I think that's pretty good. That's our neutral yellow-green. So I'm going to start with my detail brush here because these are pretty small sections. I'm going to get some medium, pull it out, and we're just going to put it down. So I think the next step is going to be detail in this. We'll worry about the wrinkle a little later. I think some of the wrinkle will end up being fleshed out by just putting detail in. You know, we'll have some darks and they'll just stop right there. We'll have lights on the other side, etc. And so that is going to make this this wrinkle kind of paint itself once we get these highlights in. So we're going to be doing just the part that's not in shadow for now. Now, one thing I do want to point out, which I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try and show it as well as possible. But up here, specifically around this purple shape, you'll see it's like crackly, like there are lighter little like almost bubbles in there. And it actually does continue up here along the arm. And that is what happens when you put a paint that is too thin. It has too much medium, like too much. Like I say, oh, I have too much medium on my brush sometimes, but even that is not really the case. If you over thin your paint, it will essentially bead up if you're putting it on, you know, cured paint, or in some cases, depending on how you prime your surface, your primed surface. But in my case, my primer is usually pretty absorbent, not a big deal. But if I'm painting on an already cured section of oil paint, that is essentially waterproof. Liquid proof, I should say. It's definitely, anyway, when we put too much of our medium, which is a very fluid little yellow thing, when we put too much in our paint, it will bead up like water on a windshield or something. And that's something you typically want to avoid. It's the exact reason why when you're glazing color over top of an indirect painting, you use the palm of your hand and make it as thin as possible. And that essentially mushes it down into tiny little beads that you can't see. But kind of when you don't do that, I did thin it, but not enough to really be a glaze. And in that situation, it did bead up. And so there are sections that have no paint on it. And that is what happened. I'm not worried about it. I saw it as it was happening. If I thought it was going to be a problem, I would have dealt with it right then and there. The thing that is going to essentially, I guess you could say, save that section or fix it, is that this is not dark enough. And we are going to have to glaze a darker color over top of it. When we do that, all of that will be covered up. Because if we look back from back here, we'll see this looks so much darker. This looks like a darker shadow here than it does up here. And you may say, well, it's a more open area, there could be more light, and you'd probably be right, but that is not what I want to do. So that will be darker, and that will be fixed when we glaze that darker color over top of it. And also, I think it'll let me kind of solidify this section here. It should be a pretty rigid angle, but there's a little bit of a wonky little like thingy there, which I'm not really a fan of, but like I said, that will be fixed. So I'm going to drink some of my tea quick, and then we will paint some of the details in this section. So after we're done with these highlights, we're going to be painting in a darker color. It's again not really, I keep calling them highlights. They aren't highlights per se. They are technically, I guess, a highlight in the pattern, but they're really just like a lighter part of the flower. We're going to be painting in a darker part of the flower. We're going to use a similar color to outline these petals. So there's going to be a lot going on here. Now I do think that that's going to bring it together with all the other sections, because if you compare that to everything else, it kind of just looks a little washed out, maybe a little less defined, I guess you could say. Now what's cool is that this shadow is looking super good right there, so that's a plus. But once we get those darker colors in here, that's what's really going to make this look great. Now, I do think even this is going to have to be darker as well, but we'll see when we get there. I'm going to shut the hell up and paint. That's what I'm going to call it for today. But before I do want to back this camera up so you can see how well that this is now starting to blend in with the rest of the pattern. You can see it looks like it fits, excluding the shadow, but this looks like part of the chair, and it fits in with everything else. You know what, let's back it up even more. I got some crazy glare going on, but let's show off this whole chair. It is coming along quite nicely. So I'm very excited about that. So as always, please consider following on Twitch if you haven't already. And also, please take a look at my YouTube. I'm making videos every week. They're essentially stream highlights, but they're condensed down into 15-20 minutes, a lot of time lapse. If you miss a stream, you can catch up there. relatively quickly. You don't have to watch the full 2-3 hour stream to see what happened. So thanks again. I hope you have a great evening, a great Tuesday, and I will see you back here tomorrow, the same time, 6:30 Eastern time. So thank you, and later.